Boom. Greg the Goblin dropping down the 20 right away. Hello, everyone. This is Rolo the Puerto Rican Pistolero coming to you live for episode 29 of Rolo's Rants. I'm coming to you live here from beautiful Puerto Rico. Not sunny at this point. The sun has gone down and we have reached the end of another weekend, unfortunately. But that means that you guys get to join me here for another fun adventure down the lane that was this past week. So thank you, Greg, for getting the show started with the $20 super chat. I appreciate you. It was a pretty good week, not gonna lie. I can't I can't deny it. We had a good stream on Friday night. I appreciate all of you that stopped by for Fortnite. We had a lot of fun. We went for the 4 dubs there. Not consecutively, though. We couldn't pull that off because that's usually the curse, especially when we mention it. So we're gonna have to work on doing that. But we had a lot of fun, so I appreciate the gents as usual. Man, what do we start with this week? We had a lot that was going on, just kind of going down the top of the list. We had obviously the week started off with the cyber attack on X, which that was a lot of fun for a couple of days. We dealt with the spending bill being passed in Congress, more rogue judges, this time being slammed by the Trump administration and telling them, wait, what? We didn't get your court order in time. We don't actually have to listen to that. To the SpaceX Crew 10 uh, making it to the space station and now getting ready here in a little bit to return to Earth this week with those astronauts that were stranded as part of a political retribution campaign by the Biden administration against SpaceX and Elon Musk. So it's good to see that those astronauts will finally get to come home. And it's just poetic justice that it is SpaceX that is doing the flying this time. So the show's always going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern time going forward. I know it's been a little bit weird with the times, but that's because I'm on Atlantic time, which is usually an hour ahead of Eastern time until we've got the spring forward effect. So now we're finally synced up. So hopefully that will alleviate some of the issues there. But I think really, what's the main topic that we really want to discuss this week? I think we have to continue bringing up the Epstein list. That's never going to go away. I think that a lot of the stories that have come out recently have been political distractions in some regard to that. But, we're going to keep asking for it every single week. I'm not going to spend an entire rant on it, but you guys know what I think at this point and what the problems are with not revealing the list. It takes away momentum from the sales. Um, it takes the wind out of the sails. It removes some of the momentum that this administration has started to build up. And ultimately, it undermines the credibility and the trust in not only uh, President Trump and those who he has chosen for his cabinet, but also the conservative media complex that has started to rise up over the last few years. And something that it seems like we have no shortage of drama within that space now, the likes of which I haven't seen before. And gosh, there's nothing more that I hate than drama. And I think we're in interesting times right now. I think we've seen of the evolution, the devolution, and destruction of the mainstream media. We started seeing the rise of the social media personality, and I feel like that's the era that we've been in for about the last, honestly, 2 decades, right? If we want to say that the rise of social media, Facebook, YouTube, in its earlier iterations in the early 2000s was the catalyst of all of that, and it's directly led to why we are who we are today, and really changed the course of history in some ways for the better and in some ways for the worse. And I think it's shown that a lot of our dystopian predictions of the future were kind of on point in some ways, but a lot more mundane than I think most people ever expected. And it's a little bit it's a little bit disappointing. I thought it would be a lot cooler, but this is the world that we live in today. So that's what makes what happened on X the other day that much starker with the rise of Elon Musk and Doge, and really the innovations that he's brought up. It just brings up so many different layers to what we've seen from the left over the last few years, and how they've gone absolutely insane, where owning a Tesla was a badge of honor for these people. Elon Musk was the innovator of our time, and it just has been a complete reversal in their opinions of that, of of the meaning of owning a Tesla, being green when you've got you know politicians getting rid of their electric Teslas and buying gas guzzling SUVs. It's pretty ironic, and you can see that they really don't stand for anything at all. And I think that goes for most politicians. It's not just Democrats. Democrats are just the ones that have gone off the authoritarian deep end lately. But this is just part for the course, right? We've seen this throughout history, where politicians uh, you know, will do anything to try to give themselves credibility with the voter base. And it's always disingenuous. Uh, it's typically disingenuous, but it works, right? So that's why they do it. But I think that the leaps that we've seen the Democrats go, it used to be that we're almost seeing an accelerated timeline for so many things, because the Democrats and the left always controlled Hollywood, the culture space. They did for decades up until recently, and they still do control that. But I think that with the rise of independent media, we've seen a lot more different voices. We've seen different creative personalities rise to prominence and start, building their companies and spaces within the new economy that we have rising up. And I think that we're going to start seeing changes, but human nature is undefeated. So, some of the tendencies that we saw with the left are what we're seeing today in the right wing media space, and it's going to be something interesting to pay attention to. I try not to dip into the fray too much, as you guys know. How's it going, Socrates, Magoat, Wayfarer, JM the Elite Fan? Great to see you all here. We've got 11 watching so far. I'm just kind of going on a tangent, just a kind of a brain dump of everything that I've been seeing lately, and you guys can let me know if you think any differently. But it's been one of the reasons why I was debating how I was going to approach the show going forward after the election, because in a lot of ways you can see that in the I don't know, in the conservatarian right wing space, you've already seen some of the fractures. I've tried not to weigh in on it too much with, you know, different debates that we've seen within the gaming space, if you want to call it that, um, the entertainment space, the political space, how a lot of people are being exposed as grifters, which is something that we've, uh, kind of that we've always known, right? That a lot of people on the internet just jump on the bandwagon to talk about things, get into politics because they know it's hot during an election season, or, flipping. sides, people that used to be on the left and now they're supposedly conservatives and totally changed their entire persona to match whatever grift would be at the time. Uh, you can see it in the gaming space with different things, bandwagon jumping, all that stuff, sports. It's everywhere. It really is. So it was bound to happen on the right, but it's a bit bizarre how it's been over the last few weeks between the uh, everything going from the Epstein list and how it was released to uh, really I mean that's pretty much the biggest one. Uh, and that completely fractured things there. The crisis king debate here, the Tates, all of this. Even though we're going back to the age old debates of Puritanism and the religious right and all of this within the entertainment space, and it's just been fascinating. And I always knew that this was going to happen because the reason why the left was so powerful for so long was because they were able to get fractured groups together. And how's it going? Dom the Rogue Attraction, good to see you, buddy. Joe C1818 or 818, drop in the gifty to Wayfair. Thank you so much. So that's pretty much how the right started succeeding under the populist coalition. We saw everything from traditional conservatives and religious conservatives, libertarians, social libertarians coming together, people who really just wanted people who were all First Amendment all the way, people who were Second Amendment all the way, people who were on the anti-vaxxer side, uh, blue collar workers, which were traditionally under the Democratic banner. Uh, we saw all these groups coalescing under the guise of populism, patriotism, many of them constitutionalism, and but there were always there were contradictory tribes here. So I was expected in the long term, just like with the left, that you're going to start seeing some fractures. But man, I didn't expect some of it to happen so soon on the right. And it is what it is, right? When you have a new coalition coming together and gaining power, you're going to have these types of struggles. And of course, being more independent and individualistically minded, uh, that's just always going to be an issue of the quote unquote right. That we're going to have contradictory terms. We're always going to call each other out, and we're going to debate things to our strength and to our detriment. So it will be interesting to see how this plays out and how the power struggle is going to be. I think that the reaction of the Trump administration is going to be interesting because I feel like our as voters and people who are in this space and believe in an America First policy just want to kind of be left alone to our own devices, and who do have uh, conservative Christian moralistic values for the most part. I think most of us here do. That no, we're not going to be quiet. We're going to call out bad behavior anytime, and I don't think that we're going to have tolerance even for those on our own side at all. So it the reactions of some people that they're in shock that this is how we are have been pretty profound and funny, to say the least. So I think uh it will. Yeah, CJM, the elite fan, agrees with the individualism. I think it'll be a lot of people will think that we're completely falling apart, but it's going to be some growing pains, and there will be some factions that break away. I think it's funny that we can all get angry about the Epstein list. I think people would become more politically homeless than anything else. I don't know if the Democrat Party is capable right now of transforming itself outside of a woke fringe party. It's going to take time for that to happen. And I don't think you're going to see people from the right bandwagon jumping. I think there's no economic message that the left can really portray, especially when we've seen all of the waste and the fraud that's been uncovered by Doge and this administration just in the first couple of months, where I think most people are going to look at themselves, look at things and say, all right, if the government, you're telling me that you guys want to spend more money, but you're giving a lot of that to illegals, people that don't pay taxes, all this stuff, sending it into foreign aid. But you you you're balking about giving it to us. I think this is where we're going to see the main fracture on the populist side, where you have kind of an in between stage or faction come through. I think you're going to end up with a couple of different camps now, and I think this budget kind of exemplifies this. I'm going all over the place, but bear with me here. Is you're going to have a wing of people that are going to be to think to themselves, okay, we have to pay back the debt. We've got to eliminate all the fraud. We have to make the size of government smaller, and make sure that our taxes are spent efficiently. I think most people are going to agree with that. I think where you're going to start finding differences is, do you pay back the debt all the way and focus on that, or do you give the American people some of the benefit of their spoils? And I think that's where the new Republican Party needs to start kind of paying attention to things, especially if we don't end up with inflation dropping. It's going to look a little bit more liberal, but I think most people would agree that they'd rather have their taxpayer dollars to go help Americans than to go overseas or to pay for illegals. So I think we're going to have to improve things in the United States. We have to improve a lot of our infrastructure. We do have to improve the situation for jobs, whether it's manufacturing, things like that. We do have to help a lot of the people that have suffered. We're talking about stopping the drug war, going to war with the cartels, eliminating all of that. But we are going to have millions of people potentially that were affected by this, affected by fentanyl, and we have to put an infrastructure in place to be able to take care of a lot of these people, whether we like it or not. And I think the right always, um, you don't want to create a welfare state of dependency, but you have to prevent the problem from perpetuating, correct? So you have to find a way to encourage people to work and to do better for themselves, but also help those that were damaged by things that were literal acts of war, and help those that are in need to a certain extent. And that is where the citizenry is supposed to do something. I agree with that. But the government has also taken away so much of our money, trillions upon trillions of dollars, that it has to come back somehow. Uh, Now, of course, anytime the government gets involved, you have to be wary of that. So this is where we're really going to have to start thinking about the future and the investments that we make to not only help people to adapt and to incentivize them to work, but also, you know, make things a little bit more efficient and also help those who actually do need help, who've been damaged by the decades of malfeasance in this government, performed by this government. Because it's true that you shouldn't see people go bankrupt for medical care and things like that. We do have to find better ways to reduce the costs of medications. When you see that insured people end up getting their prices jacked up over people who pay cash, like the entire system is completely messed up when it comes to insurance and the way that those premiums work. So thank you, Blue Shell, for re-upping as a member. I am doing well, thank you. So I don't have the answers for a lot of this stuff. And a lot of it is not traditional conservatism. It's more looking at how things are and how people have suffered and how a lot of the suffering was caused by the government itself and the collusion of governments of the government and major corporations. So, kind of the twin sins of of communism and capitalism. You're getting the worst of each one with when you have government collusion with these major corporations. So, so those are the things that we need to look into. And I think that there you go, Jam. Yeah, I think the medical industry or pharmaceutical industry is a good example of this, where it's tough to weigh the incentive of having the free market when you can also save lives. Let's say you've got a cancer treatment that costs you cents on the dollars to create, and you're selling it for hundreds of thousands of dollars because it's a cure that you know that people will buy. It's there's a sense of immorality that's in some of this stuff. So, can you legislate morality? You can't. So these are the things that we need to look into ourselves as a people as well. So, so big problems to solve, things that we need to look into. The first step is obviously downsizing the government and eliminating lobbying as an effective means of governments and getting laws passed. I think that the corruption that's been bred, and there's no other system that's better. Let's be honest. And we live in a fallen world where humans are selfish and they're always looking out for themselves. So whether you choose any sort of system, a purely state-controlled system is going to be corrupt, and a pure capitalistic, anarcho-capitalistic system is going to become corrupt at some points as well. Um, and for a lot of the same reasons. You'll end up with systems that are large where nobody cares about anybody else. The individual will get lost in all of those at some point uh, because corporations will organize themselves in a hierarchical manner as well. And so I think that that's what you're going to end up with. And obviously, we know communism never works because it's a utopian theory. So I think what we've got is still the best, but we've got to go back to our sense of morality, honor, and propriety. And that's going to be something that has to be a cultural change. And so far, I've seen a lot of people paying lip service to a lot of this. Some of it's propagandistic and BS. Some of it is, a move towards authoritarianism in the opposite direction. And I think that we need to come up with realistic solutions and not utopian crap like we've seen in the past from the left. And so we do need to be wary too in the shuffle that we don't move too far in one direction, relying on technology to do everything. I think that what we're doing is great with Doge trying to streamline processes and things like that. I think that what we're seeing through X and the decentralization of information is fantastic. At the same time, it is more and more difficult to find out who you can trust, and that is a side effect of the entire system that we've got. Who's genuine, who isn't? When people start making a lot of money off of uh, the following the algorithm, following trends, making sure that they're the first one to break a story or tweet something out, and you're incentivized by that. I don't know what the solution is to fix that. Uh, I think that a lot of the means that we've seen fact checkers in the past, and things like that, they can all be swayed. So it's an interesting time that we live in, indeed. And I'm still trying to figure out how it's going to go, and whether it's all going to be good. Because now, after you have a victory like we had with this past election, you always need to take the time to be introspective and look at the good things that you did, look at the bad things that you may have, or the areas where you can improve, I should say, and make sure that you're not a sycophant for anybody. So if you became fans of, commentator A or B, or, a politician or anybody like that, a celebrity, everybody's a human being. Keep them at arm's length. Always be skeptical of everything that you hear. Never assume that anyone is correct. Even the tools that we have. I always, every time I see one of these headlines, because there's so many news aggregators, right? Like Real 911 or Open Source Intelligence, uh, all these other independent reporters, YouTubers that we watch, the traditional media is still out there. You don't know what's true sometimes. Like last week with the Patriot Front supposedly disbanding. I forgot who tweeted that out, but I was like, I've not heard that at all. So I looked it up on Grok and different search engines, and it said there's really no evidence that they had been disbanded. And somebody tried to say this after Cash Patel got in, that they all their operations stopped. I'm pretty sure those guys are feds, but I couldn't find evidence of that anywhere. And people were retweeting it, and I figured I just tweeted right there in the on the post, and I said, "Look, I'm not finding this at all. In fact, I'm finding the opposite." I didn't get any pushback from the person who tweeted it out. A lot of people appreciated it, and I think it's you know it's crazy until you give me proof that they're gone. Like, don't just start throwing things out there because random people on the internet start tweeting things out that you like. And so this is something that is going to become a bigger and bigger problem, especially as AI starts, really hitting next generational strides, which we're almost there. I think we're barely a year away from a really, really good AI videos that are going to be extremely difficult to discern. And once you need AI to discern AI, then how can you trust anything at that point? And that's the future that I'm afraid of, that the misinformation and disinformation campaigns are going to be so difficult to parse through that you're going to end up in what we call the post-truth era. And you won't be able to believe anything. You won't be able to prove anything. It'll all be able to be manipulated any way that anybody wants. It's going to be like Deus Ex and every horrible dystopia that you can think of, except you won't have any proof except physical books. And then if you want to share those online, everybody's going to think they can be doctored. So, we're almost going to go and this would be an interesting book to write, actually, a good idea for a story. We're going to go to an era where a lot of people are just going to become Luddites, and it's going to be all about physical media again. It's going to be about firsthand eyewitness accounts. But since you won't be able to trust anything that you see online or on TV, it's going to be pure word of mouth. And that's also going to make things extremely difficult to verify. So I don't know. I don't know how we're going to end up. I think this is almost an angle of AI that I think a lot of science fiction wasn't able to predict properly, because you'd think that when you have there are stories that have incorporated the consequences of some of this stuff. I mean, how many crazy episodes does Star Trek have where something happens on the holodeck and they don't know that they're in the simulation or something like that? That's a pretty common trope, but I think you take it to the next level where you're doing it on a mass scale. So it's not just trapping somebody in a room or beaming a signal into their brain with a probe and having them live an entire lifetime that they didn't know about. Maybe one day we'll be capable of doing something like that. But when you think that you could show the entire world something and they'd never be able to discern it from reality, and once that genie is released from the bottle and everybody sees it, uh, it's going to cause some sort of chaos. It really is going to cause some mass chaos. And it sucks. It's not an era that I necessarily wanted to see, but it is an interesting one nonetheless. So that was my wild and crazy tangent there for the opening rant. Let's get to the news. And I think I want to start on a little bit about what happened on X and some of the geopolitical uh, consequences of this, especially when you think about everything that's going on right now, right? With President Trump, with Elon being so integral to the administration and Doge cutting things out, rocket launches lately, the attacks on Tesla dealerships, which is another something else that we need to discuss as well, and how that is pretty much domestic terrorism. So I think I think we're going to see a lot more of this going forward, especially as major corporations like X become such an integral part of our society and how we disseminate the news and our perception of reality. So let's go here, screen share, and this is from Tech Radar. Let's make this larger, or let's switch to reader mode here, make it easier for everybody. Who was really behind the massive X cyber attack? Here's what experts say about Elon Musk's claims. Now, I always like to get sources that I know aren't necessarily that friendly to to the right, just to see what other people have to say. Too long didn't read. What's the cause of the outage? Analysts believe a distributed denial of service attack overloaded X's servers with bogus traffic, interrupting access for genuine users. Because of the nature of the hack or the attack, it's not really possible to identify with certainty where it originated. Hackers used devices in several regions, routing traffic through a number of hijacked IP addresses. The social media platform X suffered multiple outages on Monday, the 10th of March. Thousands of users in both the US and UK reported being unable to access the website throughout the day. Speaking to Fox Business, Elon Musk attributed the outages to a massive cyber attack and claimed that IP addresses originating in the Ukraine area were behind it. With reported problems peaking at 40,000 on Down Detector, the scale of the outage is not in any doubt. It's the most significant interruption of service that the platform has suffered in years, with the effects of the outages lasting for several hours. But now the dust has settled. What exactly caused the outage? Here are the original theories followed by the thoughts of cybersecurity experts. In the aftermath of the X outage, question marks remain over its cause and who might be behind it. Elon Musk took to X on Monday to share his belief that the attack had been carried out with a lot of resources. He went on to claim that either a large coordinated group and or a country is involved, followed by his later comments on Fox Business that came from IP addresses originating in the Ukraine area. The hacking group Darkstorm team briefly claimed responsibility for the attack on Telegram, although the post was later deleted. Amid the uncertainty and finger pointing, we pieced together a clear picture of what happened and deciphered Musk claims that amid ongoing geopolitical spat with President Vladimir Zelensky, analysts across the web are broadly united in their understanding that X suffered a DDoS attack on Monday. This is traditionally quite a crude form of cyber attack. It floods a target servers with illegitimate traffic, overwhelming their capacity and preventing real users from accessing the website in question. Card said it in a statement that DDoS attacks, excuse me, have evolved dramatically. He pointed out that attackers now distribute traffic across entire subnets. That echoes comments from industry insiders elsewhere. Several experts have highlighted that DDoS attacks are usually orchestrated using a battalion of devices around the globe. Traffic tends to be generated from IP addresses, which are distributed across different regions, making it hard to pinpoint exactly where the attack originated from. Speaking to Wired, Sean Edwards, chief security officer of Zayo, a network connectivity firm, said that the attackers frequently use compromised devices, VPNs, or proxy networks to obfuscate their true origin. As a result, it's difficult to pinpoint the real source of an attack. Even if traffic did come from IP addresses within a particular country, as Musk suggested, that doesn't mean that the cyber attackers were located in that country. In the words of Professor Martin, it tells you absolutely nothing. Incidentally, Wired also quoted an anonymous researcher who stated that none of the top 20 traffic sources involved in the attack or located in Ukraine. If correct, that would disprove Musk's statement regarding Ukrainian hackers. There appears to be no evidence behind this claim that IP addresses involved in the attack originated in Ukraine. Even if they did, that alone would not be proof that any group in the country was actually involved in the attack. That's not to say a state actor could not be involved. Mound made clear that nation state actors are also employing DDoS as part of a broader cyber influence and disruption campaigns, particularly in geopolitical conflicts. Another question is how the attack was able to impact X so significantly. DDoS attacks are relatively commonplace, with Musk himself posted on Monday that X gets attacked every day. So why did this one bring X down? Musk is keen to suggest that a heavily resourced group is behind it. However, a number of independent analysts have identified that X's servers were not properly secured, leaving them publicly exposed to the attack. To quote Professor Martin again, it doesn't reflect well on their cybersecurity. Cyber specialists are warning of an increase in the regularity and complexity of DDoS attacks. In some cases, attackers are extorting businesses by threatening prolonged downtime, says Mount. Others are threatening politically motivated disruptions against governments, financial institutions, and infrastructure providers. Mount concludes with attackers continually refining their techniques. A proactive, adaptive security posture is essential to withstand modern DDoS threats. Well, there you go. It is I mean, there's no question why X would be attacked, right? And I think that the greater question is, what do you guys think? I think that Elon has the resources to figure out where an attack originated from. So it's possible. Look, VPNs and all that, they're not as foolproof as everybody thinks, or as all these cyber security companies try to sell them off as the be all end all. So if you have the resources, you can crack through that. You can find out where somebody's really located, et cetera, et cetera. But it's always a game of whack-a-mole, right? So you can go behind multiple servers and compromise devices and launch an attack like this. So I would like to think that X's cybersecurity is pretty good. So that would point to this being a massive, massive attack, uh, the likes of which would require a huge organization or a government entity. But we may never find out. But we should expect this to happen on a regular basis to X and other platforms within the United States, especially as you start seeing the payday that that X is costing a lot of these governmental organizations. There's millions of dollars that have been completely wiped off the books with the dismantling of USAID and a lot of these different contracts, and also pulling out of the war in Ukraine. So it would be, uh, it's not out of the realm of possibility to think that this would be a strategy that would be used by those types of entities. And it's just going to point to, it points again to our reliance on technology. Uh, at this point, how people freak out whenever a major website or service is down. I just, you know, I love X. I obviously use it as a resource. I think Grok is fantastic for a lot of different things, and it's improving every day, really, when it comes to web searches, trying to find the answers to things, even spitballing different ideas and suggestions off of it. It's a very powerful tool, and I think that we're going to see more and more people trying to take down this platform and take down Elon himself. And there are a lot of concerns there. And look, Elon's not perfect either, right? So we don't want to put too many of our eggs in one basket and have one man have so much control over so many different industries. If he is providing the best product and service, that is obviously there's not much we can do. But I think that X specifically as a tool with Grok and everything else involved and the personalities that are on X really is the marketplace of ideas right now, or at least the top marketplace. And it's going to attract a lot of flack for that reason. It's got already millions of haters throughout the world, and it is the bane of many a government in Europe and in Asia. And I think that's not going to change anytime soon. So to see I wouldn't be surprised if it was our own intelligence agencies or another intelligence agency that tried to do that. Maybe even a supposed ally, uh, would try to do this because it's just way too powerful right now. And even though they can inject their bots on there, they can try to sow their own disinformation. The message keeps flying through enough for these people and their plots to be disrupted. And it's something that the likes of which they've never had to deal with. And we're also dealing with attacks that we've never seen before. And, uh, t- campaigns of deception, the likes of which that we've never seen. So who knows where this is all going to lead to? I'm not sure. I think the future of cyber warfare is terrifying, and it's also just not. There's going to be things that we just don't, uh, we've never seen before, and that we don't expect will be used against us, and that we'll use against others. I think also when we saw how Israel and the Mossad used the beepers to to eradicate a huge part of Hezbollah's leadership, it was pretty amazing and terrifying at the same time to see that. Obviously, that was a unique attack that required a lot of pre-planning and hardware, but it makes you realize the power of our connected society, and that even more primitive devices that we rely on for communication can be exploited. This is how we've taken down different organizations and rescued hostages in the past. Uh, you know, uh, Taking over supply chains and embedding hardware into radios or phones to monitor comms. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that we're going to see uh, more creative cyber warfare techniques, not just the typical, oh, they're going to hack into our infrastructure and take down the power grid and all that stuff. I think that sowing the seeds of chaos into a country itself is more powerful. It gives you plausible deniability. And ultimately, once you start hacking to the point where you're taking large infrastructure, if we're talking about pure state countries, so China, Russia, Europe, the US, uh, you'll probably see a lot less of that from countries like that because they know that retaliation with nuclear weapons is a real possibility and is on the table when it comes to a an attack of that scale. So where you'll see it is, rogue groups, cyber terrorism, and countries that have nothing to lose, like an Iran or even a North Korea. Uh, but unfortunately, X and Elon have no shortage of enemies right now. But I think that, we are seeing an escalation of violence on the left and on the deep state side. That's something that we should not have been surprised about at all. I think that the mandate that was thrown down as a result of the 2024 election, with President Trump winning the popular vote, the Electoral College, and winning Congress, was shocking and overwhelming to a lot of the media industrial complex and the deep state, and even their uh, their allies in other nations overseas and corporations. So I think it's taken them a while to regroup. I think that I do think that, like President Trump said, he was there was some divine intervention involved in that. I'm not going to get too spiritual, but I think that you almost have to. Let's say that that's true. Like, humor me here for a moment. So you can't take him down. Everything that you've done, You tried to build court cases against him. First, you tried to impeach him when he was president, take him down that way. Then COVID happened. They tried to take advantage of that to destroy the economy, change society, implement authoritarian policies, and even infiltrate his own administration and, lead to some of his bigger missteps in dealing with COVID, allowing Fauci to remain, things like that. Uh, talking badly against governors that started opening their states early. So there were some missteps there with President Trump. And then you had to deal with the laptop, all these other things. Then after that, after the election is stolen in 2020, then we deal with January 6th. We deal with the backlash from all of that, the court cases, the imprisonments, the fear of people speaking up and the right being crushed, and how the media use that every single day to push authoritarian policies throughout the government and throughout the world in social media until Elon was able to buy X himself. Then you've got the lawfare against Donald Trump, how they tried to destroy him with the classified documents, with the cases in New York, going after Giuliani and all these other people involved with Donald Trump. And then you try to take him down twice and he survives, gets hit once, and you have to be thinking to yourself, and then you lose on an epic level. These people have got to be going crazy. They can't figure out what's going on here. So after they've had a time to get over their shock, they're not just going to stop, especially now when they see the chaos that Doge is causing within the deep state. And that's why also the struggle with the Epstein list is so interesting because Trump has no incentive again to help these people unless everything is compromised so badly to the point where Trump is a construct that was created by the deep state itself to, be a Trojan horse all over again. And I don't believe that. Uh, it's just that would be such a vast conspiracy that that would defy any belief that I would have. But so so we just don't know at this point. So we don't know what's going on behind the scenes with any of this stuff. And again, without seeing the paperwork from the Epstein list, without seeing all these documents, we're not going to know about a lot of what's going on. But we do know that Trump has caused a fear and desperation in world leaders, in corporations, and in the media that we have not seen before. So uh, it's just really it's pretty crazy. So well, it's true. That's true too. Uh, JM, I think that's just one that I would not want to believe that we're that far gone that Trump would just be a designed opposition at this point. Because then once we reach that level of nihilism, once we reach that level of belief, nihilism is kind of what follows next, and uh, and that would just be horrendous. But hey, you never know. So I think the fact that we are seeing so much pushback, that we are seeing things like this, shows that there is, look, where there's smoke, there's fire. We know that Trump is getting things done. It may not be up to our satisfaction, so I'm not completely disillusioned yet. And it's also only been a couple of months. We're trying to dismantle 100 years worth of a deep state system which has tentacles and inspiration that goes back thousands of years. Let's be perfectly honest. This is the way that man has operated since governments existed: intrigue, lies, and manipulation. And that's just the way that it is. Spycraft. Uh, that there's nothing new under the sun here. It's just the techniques and the technology has changed and improved. But humanity continues to humanity, and we have short attention spans. And once certain types of history are inconvenient to be taught because they don't want us to get any ideas and how to prevent them from playing the same games all over again. I think that's why we are so dumb, deaf, and blind as a society. It's all by design. That's where, having a centralized Department of Education has made their lives a lot easier. Where, if you don't have to teach people about the Constitution, about personal finance, about any of these things that will make them more effective as individuals and more discerning as citizens, because you don't want them to know. You always want them to feel helpless or confused or angry about the system and saying it never works. Well, it's because they don't even know how it works. So when it does work certain times, everyone goes ballistic. They can't believe it. Oh my goodness, the executive branch is actually doing what it's supposed to. Oh my God, they're enforcing laws. All these things happen and they go crazy. But oh no, the electoral college, they stole that. It's not, we're not a democracy. Or our democracy's under threat. They try to manipulate with all these buzzwords, with these phrases, and it's because we are such an uneducated society that has become dependent on experts and the media and outsourcing our own decision making, which that's always what you have to do to a certain extent when you have government, right? And there's always going to be government. Anarchy doesn't work past a certain small level because you will always end up, because it is human nature to want to take other people's stuff, with a group that will be like, if we just go get together against, Rolo, even if he's got a lot of guns, we're just going to come with like 50 guys with guns. And he doesn't have as many friends as we do. So, so I think that that's something that, you know, that you have to face with. That's a reality, right? That you can only stay up on the mountain by yourself for so long, set up that community before a bigger community wants to take you over. So there's always going to be city, state, countries, those types of things involved. So I think that we're going to face it. So we have to be educated in how it works. We have to participate in the system so that we can control the direction that it goes and to make sure that it doesn't grow. But we have to have the moral wherewithal and the strength of character to not be seduced by the power of the dark side, so to speak. Because with all that power, again, I'm just throwing down the buzzwords and the catchphrases here. With all that great power comes a great responsibility. All these things are true. We've even been taught these lessons on a fundamental level, not just through our religious beliefs, but literally our own entertainment. And then it's ironic to see how completely the opposite of that. They think that the unwashed masses are weak and stupid, deserve no say in the way that they are led and governed. So it's it's just ironic how we love these values, we love to preach them out, but we don't hold anybody accountable. And that's ultimately why you have to focus on a grassroots, ground up level technique of trying to fix the system. Because yes, what Trump and Elon are doing is great with Doge, but this is a monster that is decades in the making. It's going to be deeply embedded, and it's going to take time to completely destroy it and expose it. Now, if we're talking about months from now, years from now, and we don't see any changes and it's business as usual, then we know that this is a failure. Uh, that's also true. That's also true what Patriot from Warsaw said. Those who don't read and learn from history are damned and doomed to repeat it. It's absolutely true. And, this is why, again, so why are so many things portrayed to be a certain way? Being called a nerd or looking down upon people that are, oh, you're like a nerd for looking up history. That's so boring. I think that a lot of those things are actually thrown into pop culture on purpose to try to disincentivize the populace and our youths from learning more and more. Think about the things that are promoted in our society, and a thirst for intelligence is not usually one of them, of being discerning, of researching certain things. A lot of those things are not rewarded in our society, and it's on purpose. They don't want you to be too smart. They don't want you to do your own research. They don't want you to be self sufficient or to learn about history because they want people who can't discern things or people that just believe, like, well, this is just the way it's always been. So it is what it is because it literally is. Um, and there is no other reason behind it. It's the same mentality and belief system that thinks, like, well, how can we starve to death? The grocery stores or the supermarkets are always full. It's like, well, you don't understand the infrastructure and the supply chain that goes behind getting products there. You don't know the cradle to grave process of growing animals or growing crops, packaging all that, shipping it all over the place, the logistics behind it, the money that's fed, the oil that's involved in transporting things, all the different bits and pieces, the companies that make the packaging, the companies that build the trucks, the tires that handle the infrastructure and the roads, the logistics software that coordinates all the shipping, their times, the products that are supposed to be in certain shipments, where they are expected and when they're expected. It's a massive system in a web that people don't even grasp. And then you have not only that within the private sector and just the function of everyday society and convenience, you have a government that has now become that bloated as well. And it's almost like it's on autopilot. We take it for granted and we give ourselves so many distractions, whether it's our jobs, our entertainment, and our families, that we don't have time or a desire to even have the intellectual curiosity to learn how these things work. And it's completely understandable. It is, because it can become overwhelming. But I think that we have become incentivized, or we are disincentivized to look for answers and to understand how things work, and we're incentivized to just play dumb and just go along to get along and to go with the flow. And that's something that is taken advantage of. It's the bread and circuses mentality that has existed since the days of the Roman Empire and before. So it's human nature to want to be seduced by distractions, while a few people that are actually disciplined, whether they're good or evil, are actually running the show. And that's the way it is. And it's extremely difficult to break uh, out of that stupor. And a lot of the examples that we have of people breaking out aren't the best examples either. And it becomes a one side, we trade one set of tyrants for another, and and that's usually how it is. And it's cool when my side does something that's authoritarian, and it's terrible when the other side does it to me. And it becomes a cycle of destruction, and that's something that we really want to move away from going forward. And I think we have the opportunity to do so, but it's going to be a battle, right? Because they don't want us to have the power of information and knowledge. They don't. That is the worst thing that can happen to the powers that be, the elites, the governments, the major corporations, whoever it is, anybody that has power, that has something that they don't want to share. And that's really land and wealth at the end of the day. Land and wealth are the things that people don't want to share most of the time. And they will kill in order to maintain that power. Nowadays, you don't have to physically kill somebody, you can destroy their reputation and take away their means of participating in society. And that's why attacking a service like X is so, it can be so significant, and why controlling people's finances is so significant. I think it's interesting how crypto's become mainstream now, and a lot of people are celebrating how President Trump has, created uh, uh, a culture of crypto within the U.S., which is fantastic. At the same time, the last thing that the early pioneers of crypto currency wanted was government involvement in crypto. The whole point was to be able to, uh, you know, control your assets without government being able to steal them from you, essentially, or to, be able to calculate things, encrypt data, all of that. And now it's it's gone completely the opposite. It's become mainstream. And I think it just also highlights how you're going to see major corporations adapt. You've got BlackRock with Bitcoin ETFs and other financial tools and structures they're putting in place to use Bitcoin, and it just and you hear how the government it created the reserve from Bitcoin that was seized. And I just think of the early crypto fans who said, "Oh yeah, you'll never be able to be traced. All your money will be safe. The governments will never get involved, or you can't stop it." That's never how it works. The government will often allow a sort of black or gray market until it gets to the point where its supremacy is being questioned, and then it will either completely destroy or subvert that entire system. So who knows if again that cryptocurrency was a plot by the intelligence agencies to get everybody to want to get rid of fiat currency and physical hard assets to switch to digital assets and become totally accustomed with them. I don't know. So I think that that's a definite possibility, and why I've always been wary about jumping on the crypto bandwagon completely. I think it's like anything else at this point. I think we have very few assets besides real estate, um, and some of our physical possessions that we own that are worth significant value. And I think that we are more and more becoming accustomed to not owning things. Well, excuse me, and crypto just kind of feeds into that entire narrative. And I think just be like anything else. Look, uh, very few people have a lot of cash. Even fewer have the amount of cash that actually represents their true wealth. Most wealth is just numbers on a computer system or hypothetical estimations of what your physical assets are worth. And until you cash them out, they're not really worth anything. It's all potential energy. And crypto and stocks and everything else like that, it's all the same, right? You don't actually have a physical ownership of something in many cases. So it's not any different than anything else. It's just a new means to digitally represent something that you supposedly own that has an arbitrary value, either created because of market mentality or an algorithm that is comparing it to the basket of currencies that exist within the entire world. So who knows what you actually own and if it will be helpful. You've got to diversify, I think, and be ready to play the game. So don't get left behind. Don't be a fool and a total Luddite about things, but at the same time, don't become an idealist when it comes to anything that exists out there, whether it's a political ideology or a new technology. Don't become beholden to it or believe that it is the end all be all of anything and everything. It can always be compromised. It can always be exploited. So you need to have a diversified means of not only income but asset protection and insulation, because you just never know what's going to happen with any of that out there. So where do we go next here? So that's pretty much what I've got about the X denial of service cyber attack. I think what have we got here? I think some of the other big stories that are going on are uh Well, my thoughts and prayers do go to everybody that was affected by the tornadoes that passed through the south and heartland of the United States. I think last time I checked, more than 2 dozen people were killed, and there were something like 40 tornadoes touched down. It was pretty unprecedented. And there are still terrible storms going on throughout the South. I think it actually looks like 37 deaths, 60 tornadoes, wildfires, and dust storms. And the Arkansas National Guard was deployed, and multiple disaster areas have been declared. So, the nasty weather has been prevalent this last year. We just have not gotten lucky when it comes to wildfires, the hurricanes, and now these storms. So, as Americans, we have to do what we do best, which is help each other out, not forget one another, hold the government accountable when they can aid in these situations, and to come together and help organizations or help your fellow neighbor. So, if you're out there and you live in one of these places and you're blessed that nothing happened, help any way that you can. Give blood, give resources, money, give your time, uh, anything that you can, and highlight that these things are going on. Let people know. We don't want people to feel like they're alone or helpless or forgotten in these times. And I think that happens all too often, uh, especially nowadays, where we move from story to story in the blink of an eye. I mean, when I was looking up what are the top news stories this week, I'd created the show on Tuesday or Wednesday, scheduled it, and the cyber attack was already old news. And now we've moved on to the weather that's been going on, and we've got a ceasefire potentially brewing between the U.S. and Ukraine, which is an excellent development. I hope that this holds true. We now have apparently we're bombing the Houthis on a high level here to put pressure on Iran as well. We have a new prime minister in Canada. So these are just all the things we know that the Dragon capsule, the launch got aborted initially. Then it was successful on Friday. We had the docking with the International Space Station. So things keep moving. We had this judge that tried to prevent Donald Trump's deportation of many illegals. So I mean, there's just a lot. There is a lot going on, and you know, you can't even keep up with all of it. And part of that, again, is the nature of 24-hour news and the internet, that it never ends. I think in the past, a lot of it was to distract, and it could still be the case, right? I mean, a lot of this could be to distract from what is going on. And I think that just got to keep your head on a swivel while also maintaining the balance of enjoying your life. And I think it can be pretty stressful nowadays. I was having this discussion the other day with somebody who's near and dear to me about how, when you see, it's easy to sometimes get disappointed in everything that you see nowadays on the news and on TV. Even though we're getting victories, it sucks to see the Epstein list still not being released, or the JFK files not being released, and people not getting arrested within the government that clearly did things wrong. And and even though we've won and we've gained a lot of these victories and we're starting to see improvements, it's still the same old business as usual, right? We have a massive spending bill that's passed that, yes, it's what the Republicans united behind, but it's not cutting the deficit, um, really. And the messaging is just terrible, right? When it comes to a lot of this stuff, I think that's something that we've been seeing more. That I feel like Republicans are still terrible at messaging things and allowing the Democrats to somehow control the narrative. A lot of that is not controlling still the media. So how many of these people are listening are actually listened to, but it is pretty annoying. And I think sometimes you do it to yourself, right? So let's take, for example, what's going on with the Tesla dealers being vandalized in this country, and Tesla's being attacked, just on the street. I think calling it domestic terrorism totally valid. I think that when we talk about it only that we care about Tesla dealers. It should be the message needs to be if you torch vehicles and you burn down dealers in order because of political squabbles, that's terrorism, right? I think we can agree that's political terrorism or politically motivated. You don't necessarily have to say it's only Tesla, and then you have President Trump buy a Tesla and all this stuff. I mean, the imaging behind that, and then Elon being the head of Doge, it shows a bit of like possible bias on their part and impropriety. I don't necessarily like that. I think you can do better with that kind of messaging and the optics there. I know you're always going to get attacked as Donald Trump, and the left is always going to hate on us, but sometimes you have to play the game a little bit better. It can't be trolling all the time. It's got to be a little bit more strategic because then you end up with the stories of like what happened with with the Epstein binders and those social media influencers. You create that kind of fiasco where if you're always trying to meme the other side, then after a while you stop, you don't take what you're doing as seriously as you should be. And we're dealing with a lot of serious stuff. And I think we've leaned a little bit here on the dunking on the left memes too much. And we need to really realize that we are fighting a battle against people who want to destroy our way of life and in some cases destroy us physically if they could. You have to take that extremely seriously and not treat our enemies, you know, it's great to watch the memes and to watch the videos of liberals going into meltdowns and panicking and making these stupid videos about them. That I'm never gonna. I'm gonna sell my Tesla or crash it, or I'm gonna cut off my hair and go on a sex strike against conservative men, or I'm just gonna scream at the camera. All these things are great. They're funny to watch, but that represents the stupid fringe of the left and not the actual conniving authoritarians that are behind the deep state and a lot of these organizations that are truly running the show. So we have to be careful how we deal with these issues and how seriously we take them because there is a physical cost and consequence here that we are seeing, and we're seeing these types of acts of terror and intimidation increase because if you feel like they can go after somebody like Elon Musk and his property, then it's supposed to make everyone else intimidated and afraid. I don't think it's going to work. Obviously, we have our resolve, but there's a desperation here that we're observing with the left and the deep state, and they tend to become very violent when they don't get what they want. And I think that you're seeing a slow boil here. Is it going to escalate to, like a civil conflict? I don't know, but it is something to, observe and to be concerned about. And while that was going on, we have the Chinese continuing to do crazy stuff uh, while, we're dealing with, hey, can we even get out of the war in Ukraine? Right now, is the ceasefire actually going to hold? Well, let's see what the Chinese have been up to, which is actually preparing for an invasion right here. And this is an example of Chinese invasion barges that they've been building. Now, one of the things that uh, has been preventing China from invading Taiwan is a massive sea lift capability. So, meaning the ability to pick up their military forces, transport them across the Taiwan Strait, and deploy them on the beaches in Taiwan. And these massive crane barges here can connect together and make a massive bridge that would, in theory, allow them to get over some of the rocky shores and defenses that Taiwan may have in place there, whether it's mines. Um, they have the ability to set their beaches on fire with a network of pipes that pump gasoline to the beaches and other means of defending themselves. So this is the kind of stuff too that we saw kind of the U.S. developing before D-Day. We had a lot of feints and misinformation. With inflatable tanks and all that, trying to hide where we were going to invade, how we were going to invade, um, when it would be, and it really threw the Nazis off kilter. So a lot of the things that the Chinese can be doing can be for that purpose as well. But these things do look pretty impressive. Like there's no denying it. And it's just out there in the open at this point. So these things are pretty huge. I'm not sure. I think they're about like 180 meters or something long. Suppose 120 meters. There you go. The bridge, and then you can just uh, combine multiple together and have this bridge be a little bit more expendable and have your larger roll on, roll off ferries that are built as civilian vessels basically latch onto the backs of these and drop your troops off. And now you've expanded your sea lift capability where you don't need to use dedicated military landing craft or assault craft in order to accommodate this type of landing. So these are the kinds of things that we need to see countered and innovated against. And this is what they're doing. And I just don't see the same level of innovation coming out of the United States that we used to when it comes to stuff like this. I think the drone swarms are going to be the the main counter to a lot of this stuff. I think that's really what we need to invest in: counter drone and obviously offensive drone technology. Because at the end of the day, an amphibious assault is going to require ships and men, and getting a lot of ships carrying a lot of men to a beach, dropping those men off and resupplying them afterwards. And if you make it extremely costly, not only to secure the beachhead, but then resupply the beachhead, that is how you win an amphibious assault or prevent one from being successful. So I think, yes, this is cool innovation. It's something that we need to keep in mind. Could be a distraction. It could be legit, but it can be countered. And instead of spending money on some ridiculous technologies that we have, we need to go really simpler here, which is overwhelming force. And I think thousands upon thousands of cheap drones are going to be how you prevent this from happening. And you just send them out on a swarm from Taiwan and you have them kamikaze into everything the Chinese are sending. Planes, ships, helicopters, all that good stuff. You just, everything is a target constantly, all the time, and you make it so expensive from a manpower perspective and a logistical perspective that it's not worth the effort. And that's it. and then they'll never try it again. But still really interesting stuff to see. And just technology that you've got to pay attention to. So that's from Naval News right there, the original source, which is another great website to check out, by the way. So the Chinese are developing a bunch of crazy stuff to try to invade Taiwan. On the other side of the world, we are obviously looking at the ceasefire potential ceasefire here with Ukraine and Russia. It looks like the little man is finally up for it, which I'm talking about Zelensky, and I think that it's a stark contrast to what we saw a couple of uh, weeks ago, and I think it's a good turn of it's a good turn of events. But we need to see more. We need to see more. We need to make sure that Russia, holds their end of the bargain. I really think they do. I think that it's going to be a little bit more difficult. And look, this is where we're going to see where the rubber meets the road, right? Where uh, has that diplomacy that we were hoping for from Trump going to pay dividends? Or has the world just become so entrenched in his positions that even Trump 2.0 won't be able to overcome it? And that is a major concern that I've got here. Uh, because I think that the escalation that we've seen, especially from the European Union and our, supposed allies within NATO, has really made it so that it's given Russia kind of the excuse it's been looking for, right? To try to escalate this conflict or to hold on to their gains. We know that the Russians aren't going to give anything up. It doesn't matter that they were the aggressors in this invasion. It doesn't matter, uh, you know, what atrocities they may have committed or not. Uh, you know, Ukraine's probably done a lot of the same. Ukraine has also acted in bad faith earlier on in different negotiations. It's not going to matter. I think Russia has spent too much blood and treasure now to give up their gains, to try to rebuild their reputation as a global military power. And at this point, this is all they've got to show for it, which is 20% of Ukraine's territory and hundreds of thousands of casualties and lost equipment that's going to take them a decade to probably rebuild if they can ever rebuild it. So they're not going to give that up. I think that that's a realistic assumption. They're also not in a position to expand, even if they wanted to. This war has cost them a lot. And if NATO had its act together and Russia were foolish enough to try to invade NATO, I don't think, with American help, obviously, Russia would have no chance whatsoever. And it would devolve into some sort of stalemate, or Russia would get pushed back. NATO would not have the forces to take Moscow or anything like that either, in my opinion. So it would become a war of attrition eventually. And if Russia truly felt like it was threatened to collapse or regime change, then that's where you'd have to worry about nuclear weapons being exchanged. And if I go down, I'm taking you with me type of mentality. And that's a zero sum game that nobody is going to win here. So I think that I think that at this point, uh, cooler heads need to prevail. Russia's not going to be able to push this forward, and we're not going to be able to prevent Russia from keeping what they've got. So it is what it is. I think we need to try to end things where they are and start the long term repairs of this entire situation. I think we need to bring Russia closer into our sphere of influence. Again, we're talking about a country that is much more European than Asian, that is for the most part, a Christian, uh, you know, a Christian culturally based nation, aligning closer to Europe and in the U.S., and we need to pull them out of China's sphere of influence. They have a massive amount of natural resources. They have a lot of expertise. They're one of the few countries that goes into space and that was able to develop a nuclear arsenal and military technology that they've had. So they are an important country in that sense, even if they're a nation that's been in decline for decades. They can be a powerful resource for the West. And I think that that's something that we need to start working on. And eventually, look, Vladimir Putin's going to go. So the more that we try to repair the relationship between the West and Russia, the higher the likelihood that in the future, Russia can become an ally rather than an adversary. And that would be a great ally to have going, into the decades to come to counter China and what they're trying to do. And the fact that China is not energy independent by any means at this moment. So having access to, Russia's vast mineral deposits and at least keeping those deposits going to friendlier countries than China is something that would be extremely beneficial to us in the long run. And I think that we need to try to stop on a geopolitical level. We need to move away from this whole finding the next boogeyman resource and really trying to push humanity forward. I really do believe that. And that's pushing our technology forward so that we become more energy independent, nuclear fusion, things like that, uh, increasing efficiency of current technologies, whether that's internal combustion engines or electric motors and batteries, colonizing space and tapping to the resources there, and increasing the food supply and making sure that people have actually good and healthy things to eat, and making sure that we have access to resources, um, our own resources instead of getting everything outsourced and shipped overseas. These are all things that we can work towards and we can aspire towards. And I think a lot of countries would be, at least their peoples would definitely be amenable to this type of message. And it's what we should aspire to. But global conflict um, and strife is big business. And so, of course, the powers that be don't want this to happen. That's why we're always pushed into an adversarial stance when it comes to the likes of the Russias and other nations out there. And that's why the EU has been so vehement in pushing against all of this, because they want to keep Russia as the boogeyman while also doing business and getting cheap energy from Russia. Is to perpetuate this illusion and this power structure that we exist in order for them to maintain their influence and this global system that they've created, which, yes, it may make things, certain products cheaper for the most part and allows us to buy things, but it also cripples each of our individual economies and the middle classes of all of these countries um, in the West. And so that's something that we need to look into. And that's why the tariffs, I am still not sure how the tariffs will go. I think that when you look at how a lot of economies have suffered, let's take Puerto Rico, for example. One of the things that killed Puerto Rico's economy was that Puerto Rico had a lot of different tax incentives that brought high tech and pharmaceutical businesses here and led to a very high skilled labor workforce. But being part of the United States, obviously, Puerto Rico has no control over its own treaties or anything like that. So when NAFTA was enacted, it actually hurt a lot of the financial incentives that Puerto Rico offered because a lot of these factory jobs and pharmaceutical and tech industries now went to countries with much cheaper labor. So we got cheaper products, but that helped contribute to the destruction of the Puerto Rican economy and the increase in the welfare state and the debt. And this has happened to a lot of other states as well. So, free trade may be a good thing globally, but it's a bad thing locally a lot of times. And so, protectionism, all the stuff, tariffs, yes, those are taxes. They absolutely are. But at the end of the day, we still live in countries. We're still looking out for ourselves. We're not in a massive utopian libertarian society that's a global spanning civilization, which is not what a lot of those people want anyway. So you're going to have competition with people, and you have to be able to. If other countries can have protections in place, then the U.S. needs to have protections in place. And I think that's ultimately where we're going to go here with a lot of this stuff. So you got to give the tariffs a chance to see if they work, if they'll bring prices down. But if products from certain countries need to permanently be expensive so that we can get some American companies or, have American products that are cheaper, I am all for that. There's always going to be some sort of balance, though, because ultimately, what we may lead towards is a society where a lot of these jobs just are completely eliminated and they're done by AI and robots. And then what's going to happen then? That I don't know. I don't know how that's all going to play out in the long run. It's uh, it's definitely going to create an upheaval in our society as far as things like that are concerned. So let's go to some of the other stories that occurred this week. One that we talked about a little bit here with the deportations and Donald Trump's administration dealing with more rogue judges, as we call them. But this time it worked out in I think President Trump's favor, and it'll be interesting to see what the courts do about this one, because the courts really have no way to enforce any of their decrees. So this could lead to the constitutional headbutting that we've been wanting to see between a judicial supremacy and the actual balance of powers between the executive and judicial branches. So, from military.com, we'll stick it here. Trump invokes 18th century law to declare invasion by gangs and speed deportations. Claiming the United States was being invaded by a Venezuelan gang, President Donald Trump on Saturday invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, a sweeping wartime authority that allows the president broader leeway on policy and executive action to speed up mass deportations of people, potentially pushing his promised crackdown on immigration into higher gear. Trump's declaration targets Tren de Aragua, contending it is a hostile force acting at the behest of Venezuela's government. The declaration comes the same day that a federal judge in Washington barred the administration from deporting 5 Venezuelans under the expected order, a hint at the legal battle brewing over Trump's move. The judge was scheduled to consider expanding the prohibition on deportation just minutes after Trump's afternoon announcement. Quote, over the years, the Venezuelan national and local authorities have ceded ever greater control over their territories to transnational criminal organizations, including TDA. Trump's statement reads, quote, the result is a hybrid criminal state that is perpetrating an invasion of and predatory incursion into the United States and which poses a substantial danger to the United States. The act was last used as part of the internment of Japanese American civilians during World War II and has only been used 2 other times in American history during World War I and the War of 1812. Trump argued in his declaration that it is justified because he contends the Tren de Aragua gang, a common talking point on the campaign trail, has ties to the regime of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. The Tren de Aragua gang originated in a prison in the South American country and accompanied an exodus of millions of Venezuelans, the overwhelming majority of whom were seeking better living conditions after their nation's economy came undone in the last decade because of socialism and corruption. Trump and I added that in myself for those that are just listening. Trump and his allies have turned the gang into the face of the alleged threat posed by immigrants living in the U.S. illegally and formally designated it a foreign terrorist organization, end quote, last month. Authorities in several countries have reported arrests of Tren de Aragua members, even as Venezuela's government claims to have eliminated the criminal organization. Trump pledged to use the Alien Enemies Act during his presidential campaign, and immigration groups were braced for it. That led to Saturday's unusual lawsuit. The suit filed before Trump's declaration even became public. The suit by the ACLU and Democracy Forward on behalf of five Venezuelans whose cases suddenly moved towards deportation in recent hours. James E. Boasberg, Chief Judge of the D.C. Circuit, of course, agreed to implement a temporary restraining order preventing the deportation for 14 days under the act of the five Venezuelans who are already in immigration custody and believed they were being about to be deported. Boasberg said his order was to preserve the status quo. Boasberg scheduled a hearing for later in the afternoon to see if his order should be expanded to protect all Venezuelans in the United States. Hours later, the Trump administration appealed the initial restraining order, contending that halting a presidential act before it has been announced would cripple the executive branch. If the order were allowed to stand, district courts would have license to enjoin virtually any urgent national security action just upon receipt of a complaint, the Justice Department wrote in its appeal. It said district courts might then issue temporary restraining orders on actions such as drone strikes, sensitive intelligence operations, or terrorist captures or extraditions. The court shall halt the path in its tracks, the department argued. The unusual flurry of litigation highlights the controversial act, which could give Trump vast power to deport people in the country illegally. It could let him bypass some protections of normal criminal and immigration law to swiftly deport those his administration contends are members of the gang. The White House is preparing to move about 300 people it identifies as members of the gang to detention in El Salvador. So there you've got it. And in a totally gangster move, as I think we would all agree here. Let's see. Uh, Trump's administration just basically said, hell nah, we ain't doing it. We are still going to send them. So let's check this out from Axios. How the White House ignored a judge's order to turn back deportation flights. Let's go into reader mode. The Trump administration says it ignored a Saturday court order to turn around two plane loads of alleged Venezuelan gang members because the flights were over international waters and therefore the ruling didn't apply to senior officials tell Axios. Why it matters. The Trump administration's decision to defy a federal judge's order is exceedingly rare and highly controversial. A court order defied, first of many, as I've been warning, and the start of true constitutional crises. National Security Attorney Mark S. Zaid, a Trump critic, wrote on X, adding that Trump could ultimately get impeached. I'm sure that that's going to happen. The White House welcomes this fight. This is headed to the Supreme Court, and we're going to win, a senior White House official told Axios. Well, with the Supreme Court and Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett there, I'm never sure about anything these days. I really think that our confidence in the Supreme Court is we just shouldn't have too much confidence in the Supreme Court. We'll leave it at that. A second administration official said that Trump was not defying the judge whose ruling came too late for the planes to change course. Very important that people understand we're not actively defying court orders. The state of play. Trump's advisors contend that U.S. District Judge James Boasberg overstepped his authority by issuing an order that blocked the president from deporting about 250 alleged Tren de Aragua members under the Alien Enemies Act of 1789. The wartime law, actually, which we should check it out. Why not? Gives the executive extreme immense power to deport non-citizens without a judicial hearing, but it's been little used, especially particularly in peacetime. It's the showdown that was always going to happen between the two branches of government, a senior White House official said, and it seemed like this was pretty clean. You have Venezuelan gang members; these are bad guys, as the president would say. How it happened. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller orchestrated the process in the West Wing in tandem with Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Few outside their teams knew it was happening. They didn't actually set out to defy a court order. We wanted them on the ground first before a judge could get the case, but this is how it worked out, said the official. The president signed the executive order invoking the Alien Enemies Act on Friday night, but intentionally did not advertise it. On Saturday morning, word of the order leaked, officials said, prompting a mad scramble to get planes in the air. At 2:31 p.m., let's see, an immigration activist who tracks deportation flights posted on X that two highly unusual ICE flights were departing from Texas to El Salvador, which had agreed to accept Venezuelan gang members deported from the U.S. Hours later, during a court hearing filed by the ACLU, Boasberg ordered a halt to the deportations and said any flights should be turned around midair. This is something that you need to make sure is complied with immediately, he told the Justice Department, according to the Washington Post. At that point, about 6:51 p.m., both flights were off the Yucatan Peninsula, according to the flight paths posted on X. Inside the White House, officials discussed whether to order the planes to turn around. On advice from a team of administration lawyers, the administration pressed ahead. There was a discussion about how far the judge's ruling can go under the circumstances and over international waters, and on advice of counsel, we proceeded with deporting these thugs. The senior official said they were already outside of U.S. airspace. We believe that the order is not applicable. A second senior administration official told Axios. Yes, but the administration was already spoiling for a fight over the Alien Enemies Act, one of the several fronts on which they believe legal challenges to the president's authority will only end up strengthening it when the Supreme Court rules in his favor. Between the lines, officially, the Trump White House is not denying it ignored the judge's order and instead wants to shift the argument to whether it was right to expel alleged members of Tren de Aragua. If the Democrats want to argue in favor of turning a plane full of rapists, murderers, and gangsters back to the United States, that's a fight we're more than happy to take, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Levitt told Axios when asked about the case. It's unclear how many of the roughly 250 Venezuelans were deported under the Alien Enemies Act and how many were kicked out of the U.S. due to other immigration laws. It's also not clear whether all of them were actually gang members. What they're saying? On Sunday morning, El Salvador President Nayib Bukele posted a video on X hailing the arrival of the Venezuelans into his country. Bukele also mockingly featured an image of a New York Post story about the judge's order halting the flights. Oopsie, too late, Bukele said on X with a crying, laughing emoji. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio retweeted the post. After publication, Levitt issued a statement saying the administration did not refuse to comply with the court order. The order, which had no lawful basis, was issued after terrorist Tren de Aragua aliens had already been removed from U.S. territory. The written order and the administration's actions do not conflict. Moreover, as the Supreme Court has repeatedly made clear, federal courts generally have no jurisdiction over the president's conduct of foreign affairs. His authorities under the Alien Enemies Act and his core Article 2 powers to remove foreign alien terrorists uh, who are physically expelled from U.S. soil. So there you go. I completely agree. I think that this administration needs to do more of this, actually. And we're seeing a clash with the judicial branch right now that calls, us to resolve the conflict of judicial supremacy. Now, the issue is that we're going to see the left, whenever they come back into power, use this against us. Now, obviously, we're going to argue that what is being done here by these judges is illegal. They're overstepping their bounds. However, I think that if we end up going with this play, which we probably should, because I think Trump's agenda is going to be completely hampered by all of this and these activists on the bench, that we're not going to have any choice, because then we're going to be stuck in legal proceedings for years. There'll be appeals, appeals, appeals. Everything the Supreme Court does is going to have to deal with all of these things, and it's just going to, in the end, cripple the MAGA agenda and what Doge is also trying to do, and our immigrations and custom enforcement team is trying to do. But you know that when the left comes back to power, if they do, they are going to use this to go against the Constitution itself. They're going to find a judge that's going to be all for banning the Second Amendment or something like that, and they're just going to say, or it's going to go against gun control. They're going to say, "Too bad, so sad. We're not going to listen to this. Um, we're just going to allow this to happen," and they won't care. Uh, they're going to laugh all the way to the bank, and there's nothing that we're going to be able to do about it. And either way, we have to get this settled. We do have to get this settled. The Supreme Court's going to have to look at this, but I don't know how that's going to go. Again, the Supreme Court's been making some pretty disappointing decisions as of late, and there's no telling how this is all going to play out at the end of the day. I really don't know if I think in the short run it's going to work out if we're able to get rid of these people, bring them to justice, get them out of the country, start pushing back the fentanyl pandemic that we're dealing with, and reduce the crime that we're seeing. It's going to be totally worth it. But if we end up basically blowing up the judicial branch in the process and allowing the left to come in, uh, we're going to have to deal with a lot of the consequences of that later on. And it may be something that we don't like at all. So we'll just, as with everything else at this point, we will just have to wait and see. We will have to wait and see, and we will have to just be wary of more of this, because I think this is going to be the tactic that the left uses right now, isn't it? It's going to be what they do. They're going to try to use the courts against the Trump administration, and it's also one of those things that they know the right has always respected. We've always been like, "Oh, the Supreme Court, we need to have power behind the courts. This is why we need judges on the right." So, if we have been advocating this for years, then that means that we've implied that we respect the courts. So they're going to try to get us into this catch 22 once again, where we have to die on our own sword and take a taste of our own medicine, and that's what's going on here. So we ultimately do need the Supreme Court to settle some of this stuff. We need to deal with judicial supremacy. I think it's a theory that needs to be thrown away, because there's no reason why the the courts should be interfering with laws that are on the books that are pretty cut and dry when it comes to national security and getting rid of criminals in this country. I think it's absurd that this is even a question that needs to be asked, and this is a fight that this administration is going to keep is going to keep up with, and it's going to be something that we will have to uh, settle once and for all. And that's really all there is to it. So aside from that, that's pretty much what I've got for today. I will be back later this week. Things are going to get a little bit weird in the over the next couple of weeks. We got a lot of guests coming to the premises here, and this studio is going to have to be used. So I will be broadcasting from the farm, so you guys may get to see the young child cats in action and see what kind of a disaster they are going to be creating live on stream. So I'm going to be rebuilding the studio over there. We'll see how things work. I've never done a stream off of Starlink before. I have a Starlink Mini and it's been working great. I use it almost every day for work, and I play video games on it. But for uploading and running a stream, it will be very interesting. But I'm looking forward to getting that setup going, and it'll be pretty funny to have potentially some animal noises going on in the background. Even though at the time that we do these streams, usually the goats and the chickens have been uh, put away for the night, but you might hear some funny things, and you'll definitely get to see the young cats because they're not going to be used to all this crazy stuff there. So stay tuned for that next week. Friday, I'm not sure about the gaming stream. The old man is going to be coming to Puerto Rico, but it's going to be late at night. So I don't know if we'll have time to do the stream before his flight. So we may change that to Thursday. Uh, we'll see how that works out. So just stay tuned for that, and we'll see what happens with this show. So this week is going to be a little bit up in the air. I may do an earlier gaming stream then just to kind of make up for it, and we'll see how Rolo's rants works out. I think we'll have less of an issue with that as far as bandwidth is concerned. So we'll get that together. But thanks to everybody for watching this evening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Share these shows out. I'm going to drop more shorts as usual. I had one of the shorts make it to over 500 views, which is really crazy. The algorithm really picked it up. So be sure to share those out to everybody. Let us know. Let us know how we're doing here. Let people know what we're doing here, and I will catch you on the next one. Have a wonderful week. Good luck. God bless you all, and God bless America. Take care, everybody.